can do up to 25 of these collaborative zones. What we've learned from the tool and die companies, they've told us that the tax-free status really helps, but also the collaboration was a huge piece, because a lot of these are smaller shops. You know, one shop specializes in this type of die making or this type of tool making. Another shop is better at something else. By putting them together in a collaborative agreement, as the business comes in, they can kind of steer that business. You know, hey, my buddy Joe over here, he can do a little better job than I can for that one, but I can do this one for you. And so we've been able to get the companies, the smaller companies, to collaborate. And we've done 23 of these 25 that we've been authorized to do collaborative agreements. In your area, we've got about 10 or so companies. We've got like Elk Lake Tool Company, Flannery Machine and Tool, MTD Tool and Die, Camtech, Idel, Jade Tool, Northland Tool, Tool North Incorporated, and United Engineered Tooling are all in this one group. And I think it's been very successful. That was a round 3. We do have 2 more designations for a round 4, and then I'm sure we'll be probably coming back to you for some additional.
But let's go back to sort of how we started with this. Is that when we met with I believe your former boss, Mr. Jakeway, we had discussions and then followed back up with Mr. Appolito on sort of what some of the sectors within our state that were under significant pressure from foreign competition.
Absolutely.
And we found out that China was trying to get control of the Rio de Janeiro agreement, which means that they would have to have one country controlling 51% of any specific market. And in this situation, they were trying to get control of the tooling industry.
Yes.
And we have, I think, in the top 5 concentrations in the United States as far as the tooling industry. And prior to this legislation passing, we had a hemorrhaging of probably someplace around 20 to 30% of the jobs. I think we were at one point in time 140,000 workers, and now we're between, I think, 100,000 to 110,000 workers, give or take a few.
Absolutely.
And so what we tried to do was to come up with the process to allow our American workers, our Michigan workers, to be able to compete. And so far, this has worked out fairly well in the first groups that I've talked with.
This has worked amazingly well, and it's been a great example once again of, you know, collaborating on a bipartisan basis, legislature, administration, you know, talking to the tool and die industry, finding out what those challenges were, as you've already explained, and trying to level the playing field so that they can compete. And the ones that have gotten into these collaboratives, the ones that have received this tax-free status, really are much better able to compete now than they were, and we've hung on to them. In other words, you know, I think the proof is in the pudding. We are in a tremendous challenge in this state, and yet we've hung on to these tool and die companies and probably would not have otherwise.
And some things that we've also found in this specific sector, which is also replicating itself in many other areas, is the concept of investment in technology. And the lower of the tax rate has allowed them to invest in new plant and equipment, which has kept them competitive. And sometimes our listeners equate that to jobs. And in today's society, we have to look at it as a retention issue.
Yes, it is. Yes, it
is.
is.
You know, you talk to the people here in Lansing, and the new auto plant that was built by General Motors requires a third less workers.
Yes.
And those are the types of things that are going to be part of keeping ourselves competitive, is the automation and the computerization of these jobs, and the tooling industry is another prime example of that.
It's a prime example, absolutely. And you know, who knows what things would have been like had we not done this, but I think we know that we would have lost a lot of these companies because we're being targeted. I think as Ms. Moranti said in the earlier segment, you've got states that have put offices here, like Texas.
You know, to me, that was just something, and I'm glad you re-emphasized that because, you know, I know we had some struggles with other companies in Michigan, which were being courted by Alabama, were being courted by North Carolina, and given just such significant credits.
Yes.
I mean, incredible, like free factories or free taxes or free land. I mean,
cash written out. We constitutionally can't do that. We have a prohibition. But and of course we've had, you know, we're in some budget struggles, as you know. But we, even if we had the money to give cash grants, we couldn't do it here in this state. We've been competing with tax-free zones or tax credits. About the only thing that we have to offer that competes at that level with these other companies is the EDJT, the Economic Development Job Training Grants, and that fund has been cut from $31 million to to less than 10
Right.
in recent years.
Right.
And so it's been a challenge here to compete in Michigan. But, you know, that legislation was key.
Now let's move on to another sort of
Sure.
boutique tax credit. And
Yeah.
that's probably not a good way to describe it, but it helps technology companies develop in our state. And there's kind of two subsets of that. One is the high-tech mega, and then the second one is the Next Energy. And we just passed Next
Yes,
Energy.
we did. We did.
Now we have a small company in northern Michigan that I know the governor visited, and which is called Tellurix, which is doing heat transfer technology. How do Next Energy tax credits work?
Well, Next Energy allows us, what we've done is we've defined the different categories in the Next Energy legislation, which you sponsored, in terms of what can be called the Next Energy credit.
Right. Well, let's step back.
I'm sorry.
Next Energy credits are they get a reduction from the local units of government
Yes.
on personal property.
That's right.
And then there is a tax benefit from the state,
Yes.
which is like whatever the replacement is going to be on the SBT.
Right. Whatever the replacement is going to be on the SBT. And I'm glad you said that because we need to keep these incentives. We need to keep these incentives alive. You bet. But we've applied that tax credit, and we've said that the companies that are in these various areas, wind energy, and all these other areas, you know, can receive these tax credits to compete, and also to locate them here in Michigan. And that's, you know, would be wherever they are in the state. In addition, we have an actual Renaissance zone in Wayne County that's the Next Energy zone. But this is really for companies relevant to your area, like Tellurix. And that's been a great program. Tellurix was also a recipient of a 21st Century Jobs Fund grant, too, which is a completely separate issue.
And it's also been recognized by our nation's defense industry, Department of Defense, Navy. So it's got a great deal of potential, and that's why it's wonderful to keep that company in northern Michigan and growing.
Yes, it absolutely is. And I don't know if Mr. Moranti got into the 21st century, but if I could just maybe take a moment on that. What we did there was we took tobacco settlement dollars. This was a collaborative effort between the administration and the legislature, bipartisan all the way, which created a pot of money that can be used. And what we said was, you know, these funds, we'll take tobacco money, we'll front it up, the money that we're going to receive from the tobacco settlement, and we'll create this pot of money that can be used for grants and loans. It's a grant if it's a collaborative that's usually led by a university to do basic research or applied or commercialized research, or if it's a company, it's a loan. But we make this cash available as one more piece of the puzzle. There's the investors that you talked about before. But this is something that the state can do. But to take all the politics out of it, we said we're gonna have it be an arm's length process, and we hired the American Association for the Advancement of Science, AAAS. You know, and they are the ones that made all the recommendations based on the applications that were all done online. So anybody that wanted to apply, like Tellurix, they applied online. They went into the first round. They made it through that. They went into the interview stage, and they had to show everything, you know, their new technology, and then they were finally approved as a highly recommended project, and then we funded them. So, but it was AAAS out of Washington, D.C.
That's great. And I know when we put those in, we wanted to make sure that this system was integrity driven, so that we were looking at the best products and not trying to get it political and distribution of dollars or however things worked out.
We told all the applicants, look, you know, it doesn't help you to get a meeting with Jim Eppolito, my boss. It doesn't help you to go hire a lobbyist. It doesn't help you to bug your legislator. It's those scientists in Washington, D.C. who work for AAAS. They're the ones, and we're not giving you their numbers. You know? So it was totally integrity, as you say, and there has been no criticism of that process and the outcome. So.
Well, Jim, we really appreciate it. Our segment has come to a conclusion. We appreciate this, and this concludes our broadcast for this month. Jim, we thank you. Now, we need to drive people to the Michigan.gov website, correct?
.org, Michigan.org.
Yes. And that's the best place to find out information on these programs, or you can contact our office at the name listed at the end of the program. Thank you, and have a great day.